Hello everyone, and welcome back to Occult Perspectives. Hope you all have been doing well. I think it's been a couple weeks since I have done a video. Been pretty busy. Hard to find any in-between time at the moment. But I did have an opportunity today. I was actually just at the doctor, kind of one of those minute clinic deals, or like where you just walk in, and they take care of you. Kind of bullshit though. Guys, I can't stand the medical field. There's a lot of people that mean well, that work in the medical community, in the medical field, but I fucking hate the way it's set up. I have dealt with pelvic pain for a really long time, for years, and I've chased around doctors. I've tried urologists. I've tried all different kinds of things. And I'm done doing that. I really just want some antibiotics to deal with the pain that I'm currently going through, and have been, since about 2016 or so. I've dealt with different urinary and pelvic pain types of things. I've tried all different kinds of remedies. I was able to get my hands on some antibiotics a while back, and it seemed to help. But at this place, they didn't want to just give me the antibiotics. They want to keep referring me to other people. So I'm probably just not even going to go back. I'm probably just going to try to deal with the pain on my own. And speaking of pain and dealing with hard trials and such, that leads us to the topic of this video today. I wanted to talk about the influence of the planet Saturn. What importance does Saturn play in our lives as far as a planetary influence? Now, I do not know much about the planet Saturn itself, as far as the physical properties that go into making up the physical planet of Saturn. What I am going to be talking about in this video, and I'm most assuredly what most of you would be interested in who follow my YouTube channel, is the archetype of Saturn and how that astrological influence plays a role in our lives. So Saturn is the boss of the planets. Saturn is the one with the rings. When we look at movies like The Lord of the Rings, who's the Lord of the Rings? Saturn's the Lord of the Rings, of course. And you have 7 traditional planets in Kabbalah. You've got the 7 chakra system, which really I'm kind of getting away from the whole chakra thing. I've been watching some of Jeremiah's videos, Universal Mastery on chakras, and wow, does he have some very unique insights into chakras. And really, it could be kind of the explanation for a lot of the physical pain that I've dealt with. Trapping the energy in these energy centers in our bodies instead of allowing the energy to move freely. It could perhaps be a way for the energy to get stuck, like a prison for your energy, and it gets all lodged up in there. That would definitely lead up to the building of energies and just too much in one area. So what it's going to do is it's going to swell. And, if you don't do chakra work correctly, or maybe you should just avoid it at all costs, is really what I'm coming to learn. Even just energy work in general, you really want to do your research. You want to know that your body is physically prepared and, spiritually and mentally prepared for whatever work it is that you're going to be doing on yourself. You can actually cause a lot more harm, than good sometimes. Speaking from experience, I'm pretty sure I've busted at one point or another, or broken my sacral chakra region. There's been times where the Kundalini energy has risen prematurely and just very strongly. And as much pain as my body does go through, it also gives me strength. And it is through this opposition. And, that's what really makes a true warrior, I think, is pain. The ability to endure pain. If you can't endure pain, whether that be physical, spiritual, mental, then you're never going to be tough enough to overcome the challenges that lie ahead. So getting back to the planet Saturn, the Lord of the Rings, the boss. It's the energy that a lot of people don't like to face. So it's kind of that stricter energy. It's the oldest brother of the planets. It's kind of the boss or the parent of the other planets in a way. Saturn rules over tradition. So anytime you see, people dressed up in traditional suits, black suits with a tie, that's Saturn. Darth Vader wears black, that's Saturn. And even his mouthpiece is a triangle, so there's a connection with that as well. So Saturn is all about tradition. When they graduate from college or even high school, they wear, more specifically college, they wear a black square on top of their head. This is literally the most obvious ritualistic, thing that people can go through, and they still don't really understand what's being done to them. Their mind has been squared. Squaring things isn't always a bad thing. The square has its place, but when your consciousness is squared too much, it's too rigid, it's not flexible, it's really going to inhibit your consciousness. It's not going to, expand your awareness. Squares typically work more as foundational shapes. So they're really important for foundation. But as you get to the higher levels of your temple, your internal temple, your external temple, whatever it is that we're talking about here, we all have, the kingdom of self, the Sephirothic tree, overlays on the human body. So these are all just things to take into account. But as you're building that temple, as you go higher up, it's not so much about the square and the foundational and the structural pieces. It's more about you're getting into more specific, more, I guess we could say, ornamental types of shapes. Ones that aren't so squared, or you have four corners with a square that aren't so foundational but serve other functions. Like the triangle, for instance, the Trinity. It's not really good for, building buildings. I can't think of any buildings that are built on a triangular scheme of things, at least not from the bottom. So you get where I'm going with that, essentially. As far as herbs, magical herbs, I think cannabis is associated or corresponds with Saturn in a lot of ancient magical texts. So I find that to be quite interesting as well. I'm not really sure what connection, cannabis or any other, sacramental plant, can have a death and rebirth effect. So maybe that's where it comes into play. And you think about, Kronos, the god of time. Kronos is very much connected with Saturn. They're pretty much one and the same. If not the same, very similar. You also have Satan, which is heavily related to Saturn as well. Those topics tie in. So Saturn, when you think Saturn, you think sometimes, especially Saturnian religions and stuff, over in Mecca, they all walk around the black square, that giant black square. That's a very Saturnian act. And I don't know if their circumambulation, if it's clockwise or counterclockwise. I can't remember. I almost want to say it's counterclockwise, which I've heard different, there's different purposes for different circumambulations. I've heard that if you go clockwise, it's supposed to symbolize resurrection and rebirth, and if you go counterclockwise, that's more for funerary rites. That's not always the case, but I know that those are some of the correspondences that go with the circumambulations. So, as I usually do in a lot of my videos, I'm covering a lot of different topics at once. I also did not introduce, what this channel is really about at the beginning of this video. I'm assuming most of you are subscribed already, but if you are new to my channel, Occult Perspectives, what I do on here is I cover different esoteric research subjects. We talk about Kabbalah, the Tree of Life, the Tree of Death, Freemasonry, Hermeticism, a little bit of Golden Dawn and ceremonial magic, the lesser ritual of the pentagram, all of these types of things are what I cover on this channel. And there's a lot of other things I cover on this channel as well. But that's just to give you a quick snippet of what I do. Getting back to the subject of Saturn, of Kronos. So a lot of villains in movies, actually, they will play the Saturn role, which is often, it's portrayed as the bad guy. And as we know, there's not really good and evil per se, there's positive and negative polarities. So Saturn really kind of corresponds more, I would say, more with the negative polarity. It has more of that type of energy. Saturn is typically thought of as a masculine energy commonly, but if we look at the tree of life, as we know on the pillar of Boaz, or the pillar of severity on the tree of life, which if we're facing the front of the tree, of life, that's going to be on the right hand side. The pillar of severity, on the top of the pillar of severity is Bina, or Bina. I've heard it pronounced different ways. And that is corresponded with Saturn. It corresponds with Saturn. And that is a feminine sphere. That's the dark mother sphere. That's like the darkest sphere on the tree of life as far as the dark feminine energy. The archangel that corresponds with that sphere, Zaphkael. And the Saturnian, that Saturnian energy is very harsh. And she holds an hourglass, and I'm pretty sure she holds a sigh as well. Damien Eccles actually invoked Zaphkael when he was binding I think it was the Attorney General who was trying to basically ruin him. And he bound this guy, and he basically ruined this guy's career. So, the angels will, if you know how to work with the angels properly, they're not just like all these, happy, light beings. They're very harsh. They can be, but if they're on your side and you're working under natural law, the angels will help you. They will help you very much. So Zaphkael, she's got kind of that almost, it's the positive polarity because we're working with the tree of life, but Zaphkael's energy almost reminds me of kind of a Lilith type energy or a Kali type energy, but it is working with more the positive polarity of the Saturnian energy. So just a little bit more insight into the energies of Saturn. So Saturn could be considered feminine, but typically it's associated with like male gods. A lot of the times they say Father Time or Kronos or the Demiurge or the archonic being, the archonic god. There's so many different terms I've heard over time for like the Demiurge. There's so many different names and titles, and people think that it's this thing or that thing, but to me, really, Demiurge could be any type of being that is not the actual, it's not source. It's not the actual source. It is, it's like an artificial god. It's a higher being, but it's not really the supreme being. It is not eternal source. It is just a highly intelligent being that can create like physical existence. So the Demiurge is like the god of the Matrix or the god of this world per se. But a lot of people also say that Lucifer is like kind of runs this Matrix. And in a way, that's definitely would have to be true, because Lucifer is like a more primordial spirit, rather than whatever this archonic force is that is creating the Matrix. Lucifer is helping to like free souls from the Matrix. That's kind of more the way that I see Lucifer. He's actually kind of like the secret good guy, quote good guy, because we don't really like to use the words good and evil. But he's working with chaos to really bring about order. Lucifer really likes order, and helping human souls evolve and help them go through the quote fall or the awakening so that the veil can be lifted from your eyes, and you can see that there's a false God that created false rules here, which has created a false matrix, which is not in alignment with, the supreme source or the higher self, which exists in higher dimensions as well. We're here in the physical plane for a reason, for a purpose. But our higher self, our true soul, knows, that this isn't real. Like it is, but it isn't. This is pretty artificial. This is all Maya. So basically, this false god that I've been rambling on about can be often equated with Saturn. Sometimes like El, the word El, the Elohim. The Elohim is a diverse topic as well, because a lot of people say that it's an extraterrestrial race that is actually like harvesting human energy and souls. The Elohim are also referred to in the Bible, so perhaps it's the same beings that they're talking about there. Elohim is plural feminine, and that's in the original Hebrew translation of Genesis. That's actually the word of God, for God, that's being used as Elohim. So feminine plural, that's actually very strange, that's the case when it comes to Genesis. So what deity is really being referred to in the creation story? It's hard to know these things. A lot of sacred texts, like the Bible, the Bhagavad Gita, other things, sometimes they're talking about actual source, and then other times source awareness, source consciousness, and then other times they're talking about inferior, I'll call them inferior deities or gods for, lack of a better term. So Saturn takes all these things into account. The rings of Saturn, the ring is very important. Even when you're in the magic circle, there's the ring. You envision yourself in the middle of the ring. When people wear rings, the middle finger, when you flip somebody off, is actually attributed to Saturn. So you're actually giving somebody a Saturnian curse when you flip them off, which is kind of interesting. So anything to do with rings, anything to do with binding, constricting, limitation, being limited, tradition, we already talked about tradition. All of these things have to do with Saturn. So Saturn's really important. And in moving through the lessons of Saturn, what Saturn has to teach us in our lives, that's the part I'm going to get into next. Saturn teaches us a lot. There's one more thing I do want to mention before I get into that. If you look up, you can look up on YouTube or wherever, Saturn, the actual planet Saturn, the rings on Saturn make some very interesting noises. It's almost kind of haunting in a way. Some of the tones that I've heard are, a little bit more harmonious sounding, where others, they're kind of creepy sounding, to be honest. And it's not that you're actually hearing the sound out in space. I just read that too. It's that NASA, or NASA actually means, I think, liar or deceiver in a different language. I can't remember what language that is, but it says that it's the radioactiveness of the planets, and they're able to record that sound, and that's actually the sound that you're hearing. It's not that there's actually like a physical sound like coming off of Saturn when you're in space. So just to clarify that. So Saturn, there's many times in our lives where we're limited, we can feel limited. And I forgot to mention this as well. We talked about Darth Vader a little bit and Sauron. How Saturn, I was starting to get into it a little bit, how Saturn usually plays the villain. Which sometimes the villain is actually trying to destroy the old world, which needs to be destroyed. So the villain's not always really the villain. Sometimes they are fucked up, and then other times they're just playing an archetypal role for the purpose of evolution, and they recognize that. And Saturn just needs to play that role. It needs to be the darker influence, the not so fun influence. And it plays that role in life too. It can be sometimes come across as the adversary. That's why we see Saturn and Satan have very similar symbolism. It's that this adversarial force that comes in and brings a balance. Also, Father Death, too. So death is often associated with Saturn. The tarot card Death could, have its associations with Saturn. The Reaper, with the Sai and all that. The Sai is an emblem of Saturn because it revolves around death. So any of like the Master Mason symbols that deal with death, because that's what that degree primarily revolves around, all of those can be considered to have a Saturnian tie. So yeah, the villains of these stories are very important. And actually those who are like black magicians and people who work more with a negative polarity, they actually have a very high spiritual maturity to be able to see where their role is needed in the grand scheme of things. And sometimes they play their role so that the ego of the hero can be fulfilled. Let me repeat that one more time, because this is something that's really profound and deep that I've realized over time. And I don't know that anyone's ever actually said it in the same wording. But those who are dark occultists or work with the negative polarity to a high degree, they have a spiritual maturity about them, as long as they're working in accordance with natural law, that allows them to understand that they are coming into, even though they play an adversarial role, even though they might bring destruction, they are allowing the ego of the hero to be fulfilled. What do I mean by this? Everybody wants to be the hero. Everybody wants to save the day. And this appetite, this hunger, is a manifestation that must be fed. And the trials and the stipulations and all of these things have to be set up so that the hero can be the hero, so that the hero can go through the process or go through the experience of being the hero, and so that his ego can be fulfilled of having, being the hero and saving the day. What does it take for that to be set up in a way that's in accordance with natural law and, source, in alignment with source? All of this is very important to understand. It's Saturn that has to come in and play that role every time. And so in our own personal lives, there is often a time where we feel like we do need to be the hero. It's kind of like this white knight type thing. And a lot of the times this isn't even our true will, but even those who are truly of the positive polarity, that truly resonate with that polarity, they have to fulfill this role of being the hero. And the negative polarity, the higher adept, really has to set the obstacles and stuff up so that these souls can, go through these trials, and then it gives them a spiritual maturity later along the line where they realize that they will be archetypally the ones who are planning, and setting up the trials and stuff for the future. So it's almost like this God of judgment, kind of archetype. I think that's all I'm going to say about that specific thing. I was kind of losing my train of thought of exactly where I wanted to go with that. But I think you can resonate with me on that. I hope that does resonate with you on some level. Now, taking Saturn into our own personal lives. So for me, it's always seemed like it's never just been super easy, flow and go for me. Now, that's been for a reason, that's been for a purpose. In my life, I've always had this drive, especially as a quadruple Scorpio. I have Scorpio in 4 of my planets at least. So I'm very heavily associated with that astrological sign to a high degree. It's really a part of who I am, whether I want to, face it or not, which I do choose to face it most of the time. But, sorry about that. Saturn has brought all of these things into my life, a thirst for higher knowledge. I've always wanted to know things. I've always wanted to understand things. And I've also been put through a lot of physical things that go on with me. It seems like there's always something going on with me. Like, it's been that way my whole life. I'm not a super sickly person, but I do tend to have like a weaker immune system than a lot of people. So I do get, like a stuffy nose really easy. I've been dealing with that really bad for like the past week and a half. A cough, kind of this bad cough, and just like snotty nose, like runny nose, like nonstop. Because I was vaping again there. I had quit vaping. See, it's one step at a time. Always trying to improve myself in whatever way I can. I'd say I'm about a week and a half nicotine free now, maybe 2 weeks again. So I did quit at one point, and then I started again, and then I quit. And there was this chain reaction that happened. Like, I got sick and all of this stuff, like right when I quit. And sometimes that's what the body has to do. It has to bring about that Saturnian energy, that limiting energy. It's going to limit you. It's going to make you not be able to go out and do all the fun things maybe you thought you wanted to do. But in the end, that discipline, Saturn brings discipline. So if you have discipline and you're able to make it through these trials, the trials end up teaching you so much, and they end up giving you, strength that adds to your warrior strength, as we were talking about earlier. So it seems to me, and a lot of the times I've done this as a self-imposed thing, I've tried to discipline myself a lot more than the average person. Now, there are occultists and magicians who have discipline levels that are way above, mine. And that's the reason I haven't gotten into like more advanced versions of magic. I am more a beginner practitioner, in magic and the occult, and I can help you with, some of the beginner things. But my best advice is just to get your body grounded, work on learning how to regulate your nervous system. If you want to pop on over to Universal Mastery's YouTube channel, he talks a lot about that. You really just need to get a good grounding. You need a firm foundation, and you need to learn how to regulate your nervous system, and basically just not be triggered and pulled by all of these different things in the world around you. If you can like have that foundation of being, a calm individual, you have mental stability, all of these things, then you can start getting into like some spiritual invocations and things of that nature. But I recommend you gain that foundation first, before you jump into anything. So I'm still like a beginner. I still consider myself a beginner in all of these things, even though I've been a spiritual practitioner of magic specifically since 2016. You live, you mess up, and you learn, and you improve, and you build upon that. So Saturn, it limits us in a lot of ways that can be for our own benefit, as I was just saying, and to help us with discipline, self-discipline. Now, a lot of people, they want to fight against this. They want to fight against the Saturnian energy. And I know so many people who just, and these are people who, I see them deal with the craziest fucking shit. Pardon my French, but all the time. And it's like they're always fighting source. And it's like the Saturnian energy wants to come in, and it wants to teach them to like, hey, dude, like, or hey, lady, like, depending on who it is, you need to lay low. Like, you need to just stop. You're trying to run around and do all these things and make everybody happy, make everybody else happy. Maybe you like to go out and party. Maybe you like to go out and do all this seemingly fun stuff. But Saturn's going to limit you, especially if you're somebody who complains about not having money. I know a lot of people who complain about not having money, but they won't have the discipline. They won't have that and like the patience to really just enjoy what they already have, and get to the grindstone, get to work and do the work, whatever type of work it is that you do, whether it's a day job or you make internet content, and just build yourself up. Get that foundation. If you want to have an empire, you can't just be spreading yourself thin all the time. And Saturn is the planet primarily that helps us like learn this lesson of when to be conservative, when to practice temperance. Saturn is always going to like force you in one way or another when your soul needs it to to take a step back and, you know, really focus on discipline and grounding and things of that nature. So that's why a lot of people, they run away from the Saturnian energy. They don't like dark things. I know people who, when I bring up like the dark stuff, they're like, oh, I don't like that, man. And these are typically not the people I hang around with anymore, or not willingly. It's just, you know, the whole light worker like community. It's there are some, you know, really right-hand path white magicians out there who are not afraid to talk about the negative polarity, and those are really like the more true, you know, positive polarity adepts out there, are the ones who have had to work through their shit. Like, it's not yeah, I don't really know too many like white magician adepts that aren't just like full of shit. You know, for real, there are not too many white magicians out there, or right-hand pathers. I thought that was more my trajectory. That's a hard word to say. Trajectory at first. I thought that's the direction I was going. And now as I learn more about the left-hand path, I learned that I am very much in the middle. I do resonate probably more towards the negative polarity than the positive polarity, but I have a lot of positive polarity aspects about myself as well. There's a lot of sacrifice, a lot of Christ energy that I have taken upon myself in this lifetime. And, you know, I don't really accept that paradigm anymore. I will take the Saturnian energy. I will take in, you know, even Lucifer and beings of this nature, they suffer as well. Like, Christ isn't the only like archetype that that suffers. You know, the Saturnian energy, it brings about suffering type energy, and kind of almost this like savior type thing going on. But the thing with the Christ energy, Christ is more of a modern egregore, like a collective consciousness type deal that's more been fabricated to make this society like sacrifice itself like in an unhealthy way. You know, of course we sacrifice ourselves and we will take on this Saturnian energy, especially for our loved ones, you know, the ones we really care about, the ones we know who deserve it. You know, when it comes to family and things like that, you know, we of course would willingly most of the time take on that sacrifice, that sacrificial energy. But where the Christ, the Jesus energy is different, like this good shepherd energy, is where you just get fucked over, like, and you're just taking one for the whole team. Like, people are gonna spit on you and crucify you, and these are people who you have nothing in resonance with. Of course, everyone represents different aspects of ourselves. We need to take that into consideration. But the Christ energy lacks, and it's weak, because it's a sacrifice of, you're sacrificing like your true self to the whole mass collective, which doesn't really give a fuck about you. You've just sacrificed yourself so that universe A, like the false universe, can continue to exist. Just had 3333. That was a sign right there. You are the good shepherd. You are the sacrifice to help this world continue in the way that it is. But nothing positive really changed. It's like, look what happened to Jesus, but like, look at the shit we're in now. It's like I'm not saying that his teachings are invalid. I'm just saying that taking on that role, that level of sacrifice is foolish. Like, because you're not really sacrificing yourself for a higher principle. It's different when you're a martyr. Martyr, is that how you say that word? You know, for consciousness, for awareness, for the true evolution of source potential here in the world. But when you're just a sacrifice for stupidity, honestly, it's a waste. So with the Luciferian consciousness, we see gnosis and knowledge as the way to enlightenment. It's the way to, there's no, gnosis is the way to salvation through Luciferian, ideology. It's not about some, like, savior coming to fucking save you, like, save your ass because you decided not to do the work. You decided not to, like, pay attention, like, to anything in the world around you or learn about deeper occult or spiritual principles. Like, there's no dude coming to save you. Like, I'm sorry. Like, it's all being divinely orchestrated by higher beings which are observing us to make sure that we evolve, we do the work, and eventually we'll be where they are someday on a conscious level. Remember, it's all one at the end of time. But we are each having our own individual experiences. But these higher beings, they're watching over humanity, and they're setting up tests for us. It's set up this way so that we, through the Luciferian gnosis, through knowledge, that's how we're redeemed. That's how we're redeemed. You're already redeemed. Like, there's like bad mistakes you can make. There's quote unquote sins, which really, to me, a sin is like purposefully doing that which is against your own higher self. If you like really know deep down inside, like, this isn't really for me, like, this doesn't have a purpose, like, and you're doing it anyway, like, that would be considered a sin. So these tests, these things, these trials, the pain, the sorrow, all of these things, these are all things to make us stronger. And our physical bodies are only going to be here for a temporary time anyway. So people get so caught up on death, like it's this thing to be like so scared of. Like, it's just transformation. And once you've initiated through a certain degree of Saturnian energy, when you've passed through the lessons of Saturn, you've reached such a degree of death. You've reached such a initiation of death. I'll call it death initiation. Where death, like the idea of death doesn't really even bother you. Like, in some ways it almost makes you like excited. It's like, ooh, like, what's next? Because this world, it becomes and seems so mundane a lot of the times. And sometimes your soul is just ready for that next evolutionary jump. It's a balance between that, what I was just saying, and accepting death, accepting that we are, like, I am infinite source right here. I am source. And so are you. The source, seeing the source within yourself is a very, like, negative polarity type thing, rather than something outside of yourself. I did just kind of lose my train of thought a little bit. We were talking about... Okay. Sorry, that happens to me. I've been rambling for, gosh, it's been 37 minutes now. This video actually went longer than I thought it would, but I did want to talk about these topics quite a bit. But anyway, all these trials, all of these things, they are there for a purpose. Oh, I was talking about death and embracing death, because we are already infinite awareness, we are infinite source having this experience right now. So if it's in alignment with source and that's what's next for us, physical death, transformation, then that's fine. And especially being a Scorpio, we can be a little bit more okay with that. We're very in tune with sexual energies, very powerful sexual beings, the Scorpio energy. And then the other part of Saturn is, and this is where, discipline and tradition comes in, is being okay with things the way they are. As much as this world does bother me, as much as this, this medical shit I had earlier today, not fucking getting anywhere, I just wanted some antibiotics. That's really all I wanted, was to deal with the pain. I know that's not a long-term solution, but now they're like wanting me to refer me to all these people. I don't want to play their fucking game. So it is what it is. I'm grateful for so many things in this life. I've had amazing experiences. I'm blessed with a beautiful family. This is the other side of Saturn. This is the side of Saturn that, you've been faced with all of these trials, these ordeals, and you know what? You're okay with it. You're okay with being where you are. You're okay with being who you are. You're okay with new trials to come. Just know that you are okay. You're fine. You're right where you're supposed to be in this moment. This is all happening for a reason. Grounding. I've really been trying to, and getting deeper into the topic of Saturn and discipline. Work has a lot to do with Saturn energy. Whatever type of work it is that you do. I work at a grocery store. That's how I make my income. Is it the most exciting thing in the world? No. But does it teach me discipline? Yes. Is it something that can be beneficial? Yeah. Sometimes I think when I just go to work and, I don't work a lot of hours. Usually I work 25 to 30 hours, but I worked like 40 hours or close to 40 hours like the past 2 weeks. So I worked a lot more the past 2 weeks. And, I really just, it had been bothering me for so long. There were so many things that were on my mind. When I'm at work, there's a lot of these negative thoughts that tend to come to the surface, and I'm like having to deal with them, but really I just don't want to be at work. I don't want to deal with these thoughts. I'd rather just be able to go empty my mind somewhere and meditate. But of course I can't do that when I'm on the clock. The time clock is Chronos, of course, too. It's Saturn. It's Father Time. Spelled with a K, though. Kronos. But anyway. So work. I had this moment where I just, it happened like 5 days ago, maybe, or something. And, I just surrendered. My spirit just surrendered. It's like I've been fighting. Sorry, trying to get my ear to pop. That's another thing. It's just been all of these little things. I really need to meditate. I haven't been doing much meditation. I haven't had the time watching Little One and stuff. I love my son though. He's so awesome. He's so fun to be with and be around. That's my number one priority. That's my Saturn energy. Saturn telling me this is what's important for you. You need to have the discipline and the grounding and focus on that. But I did have this moment at work, and I tend to get stressed a lot, where it was just like I just surrendered. I just surrendered to my own ego. I surrendered to the universe. I surrendered to Source. It's like I've been in a war with myself or Source or God for so long, because I have so many questions when I get, to Source, which is my own highest self. That's why this is all so silly to me. It's like it is just us at the end of the day, and we're like stuck in these human vessels, and it can be quite confusing at times. Yes, but sometimes we need to just lean into it and surrender and be more that feminine energy, that receptive energy, and just ask myself, what is it that I'm supposed to be doing right now? Maybe magic isn't, and rituals and practices, that's not always like our dharma for the moment. For me, that's not really where I'm at. I don't have the time currently to utilize in a lot of occult practices or anything like that. So I've been just taking a step back and continuing my studies. And when I do get time to meditate, I stick with the simpler meditations. If I do by chance get a chance, I will do a lesser invoking ritual of the pentagram with the new elemental directions as they are on the astral plane. If you want to know more about that, check out my video on the elements, the elemental directions. So yeah, it felt really good to just kind of surrender and I guess give in a way to this energy, to the universe, and not fight it so much anymore. There are still things I'm working through, but overall, I have been doing a lot better the past month than I was, I'd say, the last year and a half. Having a child and all of those things, it changes you. It changes you a lot. And that, really, maybe that's the ultimate test of Saturn as as I bring this video to a close. The ultimate test of Saturn for me in this lifetime, was to be a parent. That was not something that I ever really thought that I was going to do. I never thought that was for me. But people tell me I am a good father. I'm going to be an awesome father, as I, we continue to grow together. He's almost a year and a half now, a year and a half old, just about. So it's been a lot of learning. Even just from when I originally started this YouTube channel, I've changed a lot. I'm not the same person I was even just, a year and a half ago, I really have changed. I've transmuted. I've come across new information. Universal Mastery, I'm always giving shout outs to him. His viewpoints have kind of like turned my perceptions on a lot of occult ideas upside down. I needed that challenge. I needed that challenge on my perspectives to really come about things in a different way, come at them from a different angle. And it's helped me do a lot of self-healing. I was always trying to banish. I was always trying to rid things of negative energy, get rid of negative energy this, negative energy that. Now I'm at a point where I don't need to banish anything. If something's not for me, I can just integrate it, and then, if I need to absorb the energy, that's fine, and I can transmute it. If not, then the energy will just go to where it needs to go. I was messing myself up more by always having to be around only positive energy and trying to banish all the negative energies. It caused like a disruption field like within me. It was really weird. So I've actually come to a place of a lot more mental stability since I stopped doing banishings all the time, since I had this obsession with being cleansed of all negative energies. So now I'm more able to just kind of like rest into myself. I did go to a music show over the weekend, and Source always brings interesting folks into our lives when we go to shows. This lady her energy was pretty erratic. It was pretty sexual, like overly sexual. She was kind of this silly older lady. Rex something. I don't remember what her name was. She had I don't know if that was her name or her nickname or what it was. But the thing that she said that stuck out the most to me is that you should always be aware of how magnetic you are. I thought that was really interesting. You need to be aware of, that was the only really wise words I took away from. There were a couple things she said that really resonated with me, but she was kind of you could tell she was not really grounded. Spirits are just kind of working through her, and I'm not really sure exactly what she was channeling, but it was definitely an interesting experience nonetheless. But she said, be aware of how magnetic you are. So that was interesting. Hippie advice. So, I won't forget that. I'll always take that to heart. It's always those fun little interactions that I tend to remember, because I'm more spiritually minded. I'm out there to have the deep conversations. I'm not much of a partier anymore. That, when you start practicing magic, when you start getting into these things, the things that everyone else finds entertaining, I don't really find entertaining anymore. I don't need to be entertained for the most part. I can entertain myself. I can meditate if I need to. I can study. There's always work to be done. So the need to be entertained as you graduate through the planet of Saturn, as you graduate through these energies, you don't need to be entertained all the time anymore. You're not a child. You're becoming more that father, that Chronos, that father energy, which has a lot to do with Hokmah, wisdom, and Archangel Raziel, which my son is named after. That's probably my favorite archangel as far as what his correspondences are and what all that means. So yeah, I think that pretty much wraps up the video, everyone. So those of you who have been commenting, who have been supporting, my work and spreading the word, Falcone, thank you. We've had a couple new subscribers, a couple new guys commenting and getting involved in the chat, so that's awesome as well. So yeah, it's been a pleasure, guys. I love doing this YouTube channel. This is a really good outlet for me, and it's a place to archive information, knowledge, so that I can refer back to it if I need to, and it's out there for people to learn from. Even if I just planted, one or two seeds of consciousness, if I opened some doorway in your mind, or, gave way or thought or inspiration to something, you made, a connection, you made a synchronistic connection or correspondence of some kind, that you didn't have before, then my job is done. I can be happy with that. I can be satisfied with that. So If you liked this video, please make sure to like the video. If you're not subscribed to my channel, please subscribe. Hit the notification bell for all future notifications. Share this channel with like-minded individuals who would also get value from and appreciate this content. So once again, thank you everyone. Peace and blessings, and until next time.